Välkommen allesammen. Welcome everyone. My name is Lynn Wilson and I'm a business development manager for Hurtigruten Norway and I cover all of North America East. Today we are here to talk about an exciting new itinerary called the Svalbard Express that was launched in conjunction with our 130th anniversary. So we're going to go over all the ports, life on board, and hopefully set those expectations so you know what's in store for you. But before we dive into the itinerary, it is important to give a nod to our rich history. We were actually founded all the way back in 1893, July 2nd, 1893 to be exact. And before we launch into the history, it's important to note that we have over 1,700 fjords along the coast of Norway. So while that gives us all waterfront views of all along the Norwegian coast, it is a bit logistically challenging to get from point A to point B. So back then, mail could take weeks getting from the southern region to the northern region, and packages could actually take months. So there was a need for a seafarer to come here and establish a route that would also operate at night and become a lifeline to the Norwegian coast. So in 1893, Captain Richard With took on this challenge and he commandeered the DS Vesterålen, and we got our start by carrying mail out of Trondheim all the way up to Hammerfest. Thus, Hurtigruten was born. Hurtigruten quite literally translates to the fast route. Hurti translates to fast. Ruten translates to route. So maybe we Norwegians are a little bit literal in our naming conventions here. But we did establish that first known sea link tying together the southern and the northern regions. And of course, back then, the intent was always that these would be working ships to provision these coastal communities. We operate as a ferry under our classic Bergen-Kirkenes-Bergen route. We still, to this day, are the fastest route in some instances, and we carry Norwegians from port to port. Maybe there's a soccer team in the Lofoten Islands and they need to get to another island. They would utilize our services. So we are so intricately woven into the Norwegian history. We are known to provide the world's most beautiful voyage, and we are known to provide the most authentically Norwegian experience. Now, the intent, as I mentioned, was that these ships would be working ships, but we also happen to have an amazingly stunning coastline. So over the years, the ships grew to accommodate more and more leisure travelers. And in 2011, we gained a little bit of notoriety here because we documented the entire voyage from Bergen up here to Kirkenes by mounting 11 cameras on our MS Nord-Norge. And this route holds the record for being the world's longest live stream session, coming in at over 134 hours. So if you're curious about the Norwegian coastline, then you might want to check out that documentary called Minute by Minute. So now we have working ships that also function well for leisure travelers. And to this day, we have 6 ships that run this itinerary between Bergen and Kirkenes. So we have departures year-round, multiple departures every week. However, we are contracted with the Norwegian government to be in port at quite specific times. So this classic route doesn't really afford longer port stays that the North American guest might be accustomed to from previous experiences. So therein comes in the Svalbard Express that we'll discuss. Before we get to that, however, why Hurtigruten? So if you are tuning in, chances are good that you have started your research to find the right operator along the Norwegian coast. I hope my intro was inspiring to you. We are touting 130 years of legacy. We provide the most authentically Norwegian experience. We are an industry leader in sustainability. We were the first major adventure travel company to ban all non-essential single-use plastic on board fleet-wide and across brands. We built the world's first hybrid-powered vessel. We have goals to build the first zero emissions vessel by 2030, and we've actively invested to reconfigure our existing fleet to be hybrid powered as well. We also have a Hurtigruten Foundation. This is a collaboration between Hurtigruten, our guests, our partners, and private donors. And its purpose is just to fight climate change, strengthen those local communities, and stop unsustainable mass tourism. And so far, we have supported over 50 projects in 13 different countries with over 5 million kroner. Our culinary experience, we not only provide an amazing culinary experience on board, but we provide a sustainable culinary experience on board because 80% of our food is sourced locally from over 50 suppliers along the Norwegian coast. So you're not only going to see Norway and experience Norway like a Norwegian, you will also taste Norway. So I hope that drums up some inspiration here. So now, 2023, we have a few Norway coastal itineraries to choose from. The intro features this classic route, year-round departures, all seasons, 6 ships. So there's always going to be departures every week. You can do a 12-day Bergen, Kirkenes, Bergen, 11-day Discovery, Bergen, Kirkenes, Trondheim. You can do a 7-day northbound or a 6-day southbound Kirkenes to Bergen. Also, we have a port-to-port program within this route where you can choose shorter segments on our website as well. And then the North Cape Express is the Northern Lights counterpart to the MS Trollfjord, and I have recorded a separate overview of the North Cape Express. Today, however, we are focusing on the Svalbard Express, and we call this the return of an icon. Between 1968 and 1982, we had a government contracted route that tied together mainland Norway with this high Arctic destination or the Svalbard archipelago. So we are paying homage to our rich history by launching these new itineraries. Also pay attention to the time frame of which we sail the Svalbard Express itineraries. May through September, the dominating theme here would be midnight sun. Once we get into September through March, we turn our sights onto Northern Lights season. So here you see an old image of the Svalbard Express or the Sportsman route. This itinerary will get you to 78 degrees north. And again, the dominating theme here, midnight sun. Fun fact, in the Svalbard archipelago, the sun does not set from late April through late August. And along the coast of mainland Norway, you will also have months above the Arctic Circle where the sun does not set there either. So great for 24/7 land views. The Svalbard Express will have a few different iterations. So the full round trip is Bergen, Honningsvåg, come all the way up here to Ny-Ålesund, which is home to the world's northernmost post office, in case that's on your bucket list. Then the ship, the MS Trollfjord, will come down by means of Tromsø and sail south to Bergen. If you can't do the full round trip, we have also broken this up into northbound and southbound segments. So the northbound segment, the package would be Bergen, Honningsvåg, Longyearbyen, debark and spend 3 days here. And then the southbound for anyone who really wants to experience more of the high Arctic, you can fly into Longyearbyen, then spend 3 days there, sail up to Ny-Ålesund, and then back down by means of Tromsø down to Bergen. So this 3-day land package in Longyearbyen is quite attractive because you have fewer than 3,000 inhabitants living in the Longyearbyen region. They are largely expats from many different nations, and Svalbard is just generally a really, really interesting place to visit anyways. Now pay attention here at the bottom. If you book anything further out than 90 days, it is sold as a package. So for the round trip, there's usually a pre-night built into Bergen. For the half voyages, you generally speaking will have the 3 days post or pre in Longyearbyen. Anything that's booked within 90 days of departure will be sold as cruise only. So let's discuss the port overview. This is a screenshot of the itinerary for the full round trip voyage. And of course, the turnaround point would be here on day 9 for northbound versus southbound respectively. Bergen, Norway's second largest city, and known for this colorful wooden architecture. You'll find different architectural designs up and down the coast of Norway. But right here, before you've even set foot on ship, we have a UNESCO World Heritage Site here called Bryggen. Also well known would be the fish market in this region. There's a funicular fløibanen that'll take you to impressive vistas. There's loads of hiking opportunities in the Bergen region, and Bergen is also surrounded by fjords. So you'll have the pre-night here. All the flights coming out from North America are overnight. So you're probably planning on spending an extra night anyways. So rest assured, we've already built that into the package for you. I mentioned that we will showcase Norway like a Norwegian. We do provide the most authentically Norwegian experience. And in that comes friluftsliv. This is Norwegian for great outdoor life, if you will, outdoor living. Norwegians love to hike. We love to kayak. We love to ski. We love to camp. So friluftsliv will be a recurring theme all throughout this itinerary. And also just here on day 2, we're taking off other bucket lists. You know, why do you want to go to Norway to begin with? You want to experience fjords. You want to experience mountains. Well, Åndalsnes is known to be the mountaineering capital of Norway. There's fjords that you've passed already coming into Åndalsnes, the Romsdalsfjord. And you can see here, these two jolly gentlemen are standing at a vantage point called Rampestreken. So there would be an optional activity to hike to Rampestreken or take a gondola ride to this vantage point. Also optional activity would be the Trollstigen Pass. This is that hairpin bends and roads that you might have seen. Impressive photo stops, loads of waterfalls along the way. So if you'd like to explore a little bit more landside, then this would be a great optional excursion to book. We're also going to call upon non-touristy traps. So Tirana would be one such example. This place is wildly interesting. Tirana is located right on the Arctic Circle, and there's usually an Arctic Circle crossing ceremony that we host on all of our voyages. But one of the smallest municipalities in Norway, fewer than 500 inhabitants, and they're so remote. Tirana is located about 33 nautical miles offshore. So you can imagine the remote life that takes place here, particularly in the winters. We also have archaeological finds dating back 9,000 years. So there's no shortage of history in this region. And there'd be a few optional activities to choose between: Tirana, island hopping, culture walk, poetry, art, and heritage, maybe sample local fish cakes and beer. And something that Norwegians love to do is we love to plunge our bodies into ice cold water. So we're always conducting these polar plunges whenever, wherever possible. I mentioned the Arctic Circle crossing. There's usually a ceremony that may or may not include some ice water when you sail northbound. Another thing we're known for in Norway is our love for saunas. So once again, we are reinforcing this idea that you will be exploring Norway like a Norwegian. So I highly encourage you to take that polar plunge and participate in this Arctic dip sauna and swim excursion. The Svalbard Express will take us by Stokmarknes and Vesterålen. And once again, we're paying homage to our rich history and past. Stokmarknes is where it all began all those years ago. That's where we got our start with Hurtigruten. And Vesterålen is a beautiful archipelago that's just off of the Lofoten archipelago. It is not as well known, but it is definitely rich in landscapes spanning from calm and peaceful beaches and farmlands to rugged alpine mountains, dramatic fjords, and wilderness. Vesterålen is also a great place to experience sea eagles. So there is a sea eagle safari in this region. And the other optional excursion would be a visit to the Hurtigruten Museum. What you see here is our decommissioned 1956 vessel, the MS Finnmarken. It's not going to look like this when you go. There's now a structure surrounding this ship, but I just like this particular image because it showcases the ship quite nicely. So this again reinforces how historically important Hurtigruten is to Norway, because we have been known for being this lifeline to the Norwegian coast, so much so that we do have a Hurtigruten museum. We are going to go to Tromsø, aka Gateway to the Arctic, aka Paris of the North. So this is northern Norway's urban Arctic hotspot. We boast impressive architecture, hip restaurants, the world's northernmost university. The modern city has a long legacy with artifacts found that date back to the Ice Age. And the city grew in importance after being declared a köpstad, or a market town, in 1794. At the time, it was only home to 80 people. but it quickly became a center for Arctic hunting in the mid-1800s. And by the end of the 19th century, Tromsø was an established Arctic trade center. So now it is northern Norway's largest city, just clocking just shy of about 80,000 inhabitants. So excursions that you could participate in here would be a Viking homestead visit, maybe explore Tromsø, the Arctic capital during summer. You can explore on foot, take a stroll through the fascinating history and heritage of Tromsø, discover why it's known to be the gateway of the Arctic. Or perhaps you want to visit the Mack Brewery, world's northernmost brewery. However, Longyearbyen in Svalbard also has a brewery, so this may not be the world's northernmost brewery anymore, but one of the world's northernmost breweries anyways. So then we're going to call upon Honningsvåg, and this is a port that is a jump-off point for the North Cape, which is the famed northernmost point of Europe. So this is a cliff or a plateau that stands about 1,000 meters above sea level, and it's just over 1,000 miles south of the geographic North Pole. So you'll kind of feel like you're on top of the world here at the North Cape. Honningsvåg is known for king crab and rich bird life. You can see bird species such as razorbills, puffins, skuas, gannets, and eagles. Also known as Sami culture in the Honningsvåg region. So in Honningsvåg, you'll have a few optional activities here, Honningsvåg and North Cape. So you can experience North Cape and king crab experience. You can participate in a hike and a bird watching excursion in Gjesvarstappen Nature Reserve. Or for the adrenaline junkies tuning in, why not take a four-wheeler to go explore the North Cape? After you think that we just can't get any further north, we're going to say, but wait, there's more. We are going to sail past Bjørnøya. So this is the southernmost island of the Svalbard archipelago, and it's just past the halfway point between mainland Norway and Spitsbergen. So we are going to just be sailing past here. Very little grows in this region. I think the only native animal here would be Arctic foxes, but it's known for its rich bird life here. So just sit out on deck with your binoculars and enjoy the nesting birds along these cliffs as we sail past. The high Arctic is the turnaround point for the half voyages. And this is a lovely sample of seeing what the high Arctic has to offer. So Svalbard is known to be an Arctic desert. It's known to have more polar bears than people surrounding the archipelago. Side note to say, we're not likely to see polar bears on this route. They're more prevalent on the east coast of the Svalbard archipelago. But it is possible to see walrus and loads of migratory birds, including Arctic terns that migrate all the way from Antarctica to Svalbard. I do believe that Longyearbyen does have the bar with the highest number of spirits, and there's loads of optional excursions that you can choose between here. You can participate in dog sledding or learn about the Svalbard wilderness and history. For the half voyages, the turnaround point. So northbound, you would debark in Longyearbyen and have 2 hotel nights, and included in the land package would be a couple of excursions. One would be a hybrid electric catamaran trip down the Billefjord. And that's a fjord that will take you to a glacier called the Nordenskjoldsbreen. The other included activity here would be a true Svalbard wilderness evening at Camp Barents. So you'd have the opportunity to enjoy a dinner in a cozy wooden cabin and maybe have dessert around a campfire and go hang out with the Svalbard reindeer. And once again, for those embarking in Longyearbyen, you would be sailing up to Ny-Ålesund, which is largely a research town with only inhabitants ranging under 100 to maybe 200, largely researchers conducting climate and glacial research. So then we set our sights back on mainland Norway, and we come back by means of Tromsø and Senja. So we're just going to make a quick cargo stop in Tromsø. The Svalbard Express and the MS Trollfjord will not be operating as a ferry. We will not carry Norwegians port to port. However, we will continue with cargo and provisioning these coastal communities, because that's another important part of who we are as a company. We are a lifeline to the Norwegian coast. So the highlight of this day would be Senja. So this is known to be mini Norway. This island has a concentration of landscapes that are inspired by all different parts of the Norwegian coast. And it was voted by CNN to be one of the top 10 most beautiful islands. So optional excursions in this region would be a Senja wildlife safari. Here you can participate in a scenic guided e-bike tour, explore the highlights of the North Sommarøy and Senja by bus. So that this scenic bus tour would take in the fjords, rugged mountains, sandy beaches, and of course the beautiful villages. Also, we would try to procure a hike in this region, weather dependent, with our coastal experience team near Finnsnes. Another stop is the Lofoten Islands. And if you have endeavored or started researching Norway, I guarantee you have seen images of the Lofoten archipelago. This is one of the most scenic areas of Norway. And our stop here is a contrast from that classic Bergen-Kirkenes-Bergen route. So on the government contracted route, that Bergen-Kirkenes-Bergen, or the original coastal express, we don't have a long time in any of the Lofoten ports. So the best way to explore would be by means of a dual port excursion. But for the Svalbard Express, we're here for 8 hours. So that does open the door for independent exploration. You can participate in a fishing excursion, kayaking excursion, maybe go on the highlights of Reine and Lofoten. So Reine is one of the most scenic areas in Norway. And also we hope to procure a beach cleanup session. So the daily theme here in Svalbard should be sustainability. I'll pause there to just say that we are known for conducting beach cleanups on most of our offerings. And in 2022, we did clear well over 5,000 pounds of waste across brands. And this was largely conducted on uninhabited beaches. Brønnøysund, another area we will stop that is most known for this mountain that you see here. This is called Hurtigruten Mountain. So Hurtigruten Mountain has a lovely legend or lore as to how that hole came to be. And according to the legend of Helgeland Mountains, Hurtigruten was formed when the troll Hestemon was jilted in love and he attempted to shoot an arrow after the girl who dared deny his advances. Lekamøya was running away from him, and then the troll king of Mount Sømnafjellet, he saw this, he threw his hat in the path of the arrow. The arrow pierced the hat that formed the hole, the sun rose, and everyone was turned to stone. If lore isn't your cup of tea, the other example would be that this hole was formed during an ice age. So optional activities in Brønnøysund, legends of Hurtigruten and Brønnøysund. Brønnøysund by bike, go explore this lovely fishing village. I think my favorite would be the Hurtigruten mountain hike. So this is what you see here pictured in the left. You have the opportunity to hike to this hole. So I would recommend this. Or maybe you want to partake in a sea adventure by rib where you can explore the landscapes around Brønnøysund from the water in a thrilling rib ride. I mentioned that architecture could very well be a theme throughout any of our voyages, and Ålesund is one such example. So you'll see here that we've opted for a different architectural design here. There was a nasty fire in the early 1900s, and when they rebuilt, they opted to rebuild in Art Nouveau style. There's an impressive vista point here called Mount Aksla. Hopefully we'll have the opportunity to hike there, but we are in Ålesund for a few hours, so you could participate in an architecture and breweries optional excursion where you basically just stroll around, learn about this Art Nouveau architecture, taste some of the best local beer from a small brewery, or you can participate in a dual port excursion called the Mountain Peaks and Fjords. This is a scenic bus tour where you can see some of the most iconic sites. We'd start with a short sightseeing tour of Ålesund. Then we would pop on a ferry across a fjord called Storfjord. It's one of Norway's longest fjords, and it branches off into the world famous Geirangerfjord. Then we would drive inland through beautiful valleys surrounded by soaring mountain peaks. This is another reason why do you want to experience our beautiful country? You want to experience the fjords and the mountainscapes. And then the tour would end in a small, tiny village of Urke with all of 40 inhabitants. So very scenic day and opportunities for all guests. And for those who don't take the dual port excursion, you will have the opportunity to sail into the Jørenfjord as well. So you will also have a scenic day. So that's just a port overview of the Svalbard Express. I've been mentioning some of these off-ship activities along the way throughout the presentation. And it's important to note when you're looking at excursions to find the right fit for you. So you'll notice if you're perusing our website that all of our excursions do have their own landing pages. And on each one, you're going to see the level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's important to note and also keep in mind your own mobility. So level 1 might be a guided bus tour. Level 4 would be rib boats. It would be kayaking. It would be hiking. So you would need the better mobility. And we do have a robust list of excursions that you can partake in. Let's talk about your ship, the MS Trollfjord. She was built in the early 2000s at Fosenverk, which is right across the Trondheimsfjord where I grew up. She was fully refurbished in 2023. And whenever you're looking at any experience with Hurtigruten Norway, it's important to consider your stateroom as your bedroom. It is not really a place where you're going to spend a lot of time because the entire ship is built for your comfort. So as you mosey on about the ship, there's a 2-story panorama lounge on the Trollfjord. That's your living room. There's multiple restaurants. Those are your kitchens. We have ample deck space. That's where you'll have your leisurely time just spotting the wildlife. So just treat this as your base camp at sea. The onboard life, or life on board rather, is much calmer than what you might have experienced with the white ship cruises, for example. So we don't have the late night casinos or discotheques, but we do have a robust onboard lecture program. It's very important for us for you to experience Norway like a Norwegian. So we will definitely educate you all throughout the voyage. Whenever we pass areas of historical and cultural significance, we host what we call points of interest out on deck. We're going to host movie nights, photography guidance. This is a great itinerary for avid birders, how to photograph birds, these beautiful landscapes, the midnight sun. We'll have handcraft and art classes. We just recently saw some painting that was taking place at the North Cape, as well as the high Arctic, the Svalbard archipelago. We have a lovely library where you can just sit back and read a good book and watch the beautiful landscapes lazily glide by. These are also culinary experiences. So rule number 1, we do not wear tight clothing on culinary cruises, and we do have fitness facilities to offset that caloric intake. So I mentioned the topic of education. So your coastal experience team, this is your source of edutainment, aka entertainment in the form of education. So 5-person coastal experience team, they will be the ones offering up hikes that are bookable on board. They will be the ones hosting these points of interest out on deck. They will be the ones hosting these photography tips sessions and the art classes. So you will arrive as a guest, but I dare say you will leave as a friend. Now, I mentioned culinary cruises, and we do lean heavily on a concept called Norway's Coastal Kitchen. So you'll taste this authentic food based on the local ingredients that are sourced all up and down the Norwegian coastline. We will offer a true fjord to fork cuisine here. 80% of our food is sourced locally. We will have you taste the coast of Norway. We have the seasonal ingredients. Every meal, every drink that you partake in will have a story behind it. We have the breweries brewing beer specifically for Hurtigruten. Aurora Spirits, they make premium gin and akvavit specifically for Hurtigruten. We have something called Bubbles of the Sea, where we aged about 1,700 bottles of sparkling wine at 112 feet in a fjord off Sandnessjøen. So we age this for 6 months, and this is an ongoing event as well. So you'll have the opportunity to get a true taste of Norway when you sail with us. We have a few restaurants to choose between. Flora, that is our main dining, all-day dining, included for all guests. Flora is inspired by Norway's edible herbs, berries, mushrooms, flowers, fruits, and vegetables. So all meals can be served here. The format will be a variation of buffet and seated meals, but we always have meat-based, fish-based, plant-based options, and we have a robust vegan menu on board as well. Then you have Brasserie Arran. That's our Nordic steakhouse, and this is our way of showing our respect and gratitude to the Sami people and everything they've done for Norway. Arran is a northern Sami word for the fire at the heart of a lavu. This is a temporary dwelling used by the Sami people for thousands of years. This is a place where people tend to gather and share stories, and that is the intent of the restaurant. So we hope that after a lovely day chasing this midnight sun and avid bird watching, that you'll share the stories with your fellow guests on board. Then you finally have Rus. This is our fine dining, which is included for suite guests all-day dining. Rust is inspired by the ancient fish bank of Rust in Lofoten Islands. So this is an homage to the produce that helped establish Norway, which was fish. You'll remember that I said that we established the first known sea link covering the southern and northern regions. With that came the opportunity to engage in export. So a lot of the prosperity of the country can be tied back to our operations. Then finally, you have the 1893 bar, two-story panorama lounge again, and you can partake in Nordic cocktails here. Again, we do endeavor to partner with as many Norwegian suppliers as possible. So you have the gin that is procured specifically for Hurtigruten, bubbles of the sea specifically for Hurtigruten, akevit, maybe the drinks are infused by seasonal berries. So partake here and get a proper taste of this Norwegian coastline. Let's talk about what's included. So culinary cruise, full board for non-suite guests would be all-day dining in Flora and Arran. And if you book a suite, it would be all-day dining Flora, Arran, and Rust. For drinks, complimentary coffee and tea throughout the voyage and unlimited selected drinks. So house beer, house wine, select spirits at Flora and Arran. And if you've booked a suite, also in Rust. So for the cabin, if you're booking a round trip, you get the cabin category and choice of cabin number. If you're booking the half voyage, you will have the cabin category and your number will be assigned upon check-in. The ship is kitted out with Starlink internet, so complimentary Wi-Fi, and your life on board, the onboard programs, the lectures with the Coastal Experience team, the movie nights, the music entertainment, the photography tips, the library access, that is all included. The currency on board is in kroner. And also when packing, you don't have to overpack for this type of experience because we do have self-service laundry on board. So you can easily do a load of laundry. Again, continuing the theme that Hurtigruten provides your base camp at sea. So this will be your home away from home. So I hope you have found this overview to be helpful. I hope we have the opportunity to welcome you on board. So thank you so much for tuning in. Take care.